Welcome back to Costume Co. and my top 10 most compelling costumes for Game of Thrones, this one for the Season 7 finale titled The Dragon and the Wolf. This was my favorite episode for Season 7. It didn't offer up the best costumes, however. And as many of you know, I was waiting for that blockbuster costume, that one that knocked it out of the park. As well, this season was very dark, and I can understand why it is this way thematically, but it doesn't really make for good costume viewing. So with Season 8 not arriving until late 2018, maybe even 2019, I will bring you plenty of more Game of Thrones dedicated videos in the coming year. Just a reminder that I'm going to be at Fan Expo in Toronto, Canada on opening day, which is next Thursday, August 31st. Fan Expo Canada is a smaller version of the San Diego Comic-Con. I'll be doing a video next week, hopefully meeting lots of great vendors and cosplayers. I had a submission last night, so I thought I'd squeeze it into my last Game of Thrones recap video of the season. And if you would like to share your costume-related designs or cosplay with me and my viewers, you can email it to me. I'll just leave my email in the description below. This Sansa Stark costume comes from viewer Christina Stein. This is what she says about her rendering. I decided to do up a design based on Sansa's newfound power, bringing color back into her wardrobe but keeping the protective nature of the details of her costume. So thank you so much, Christina, for sharing with us your gorgeous design. Warning, there will be spoilers in this episode for everything that's happened in the show so far, and most importantly, the finale episode of Season 7. So come back and watch this after you've seen the episode The Dragon and the Wolf. Before we get into the countdown, I wanted to show you this great shot of Jorah Mormont's costume from the finale episode. The boys had really great costumes this year, and Jorah's costume, along with our hero Jon Snow, had to be the two of the most solid looks of the season. And now, without further delay, let's count down what I think are the most compelling costumes in Episode 7, starting with number 10. There were lots of partial looks this season, including this outfit for Cersei. There seems to have been some budget restraints and stretching the dollar where our principal cast are concerned. Cersei actually only had 4 new costumes this season. Here is the same gown, but with her spiky gorget collar and embroidered pauldron shoulder pieces. For this pared-down look, Clapton swapped out the elaborately embroidered armor in favor of this matching dicky and black pelt. And you can see that when Cersei sits, the center front falls away, revealing a simple black underskirt. My images aren't high enough resolution, however, to tell what type of fabric the underskirt is made from. Here's a close-up of the metallic tweed fabric taken from a few episodes back. There's a good chance that Cersei's collar is good quality faux fur like rabbit or black sable because Clapton has been trying to use man-made furs more often in her design. It does look a lot like Joffrey's collar that he wore in Season 1. In this wide shot, you can see that the hem is ankle length as opposed to floor length. Michelle Clapton prefers this length for Cersei because she believes that showing the feet shows strength. When Samwell heads north to Winterfell, he ditches his linen tunic in favor of his quilted gambesson, adding this traveling cloak. Here's a good shot of it here. I thought I'd interject while I'm at it. There's been some rumor that the collars on the cloaks have come from IKEA rugs. So to clear the air, Michelle Clapton did use woolly rugs on the Night's Watch in Season 1. Here's an example of one of the rugs that she actually used. The collar here, however, I can assure you is not an IKEA rug. Again, it might be some type of faux fur. Arya has been moving toward this final look all season, finally landing on this quilted leather jerkin with detachable sleeves and leather tab skirts for this momentous scene. This look is full Stark. Arya is channeling not only her father Ned, but Robb and Jon Snow as well. And as I've mentioned before, and had lots of contribution on this in the chat, Arya's costume is covered in a square motif. The leather skirt has the same pattern, like we saw in the door of the House of Black and White. Here is a look at the skirt from a photo shoot done earlier in the year for Entertainment Weekly. Here's another close-up shot that include her boots that look kind of like a cavalry riding boot, or in Canada we might call them Mountie boots. On the left is an example of top-laced interwar USMC boots from the 1920s or 30s, and on the right is an example of a pair of side-laced US officer cavalry boots from World War I. Here's a close-up of the skirt. The top layer is custom leatherwork that looks hammered or maybe even cut, and then it's heavily distressed to give it that model appearance. And by the weight, it looks like it's sandwiched to another piece of leather and then bound with a contrasting leather. Here's another partial change for Tyrion. Costume designer Michelle Clapton has been changing up Tyrion's sleeves and jerkin all season long. So last episode he wore these nubby leather sleeves, but now he's all matchy-matchy with the vest and the sleeves. In this shot, you can really see the texture. At first, it looked as though the texture was sort of a bumpy, nubby texture, but after looking at the cloth more carefully, it looks as though the fabric has been hammered on the reverse side, which leaves these little square punctures. And I also want to point out that it's doubtful that this is real leather because actor Peter Dinklage is vegetarian, and I know that Clapton makes accommodations for her actors where she can. Here's a close-up of the fabric and the bits of leather sticking up. The texture of his doublet is actually similar to the cheese grater texture of the Night King and fellow White Walkers. And while I'm speaking of that, a meme has been going around that says that Bran is the Night King because they have these similar costumes. This, of course, is an illogical argument because Bran was dressed in a leather jerkin with winged cap sleeves, like that of his father Ned, Master-at-Arms Roderick Cassel, and even his sister Sansa. And the silhouette is even similar, to a lesser extent, to his brother Robb and sister Arya. So, by this rationale, Tyrion is as likely to be the Night King as anyone. Here's another partial costume for Bran in this flashback scene. He's actually wearing this under his cloak and furs. Here's a promotional photo of Bran's costume, and you can see a bit of the brigandine under his cloak. I'm calling it a brigandine because the suede jacket appears to be studded with steel rivets. The rivets indicate that there are metal plates inside the coat. So Bran's wearing the brigandine over a set of quilted cloth tab skirts and a charcoal linen shirt, which is gathered at the neck into a band. The sleeves are attached through to the tunic with laces, and the whole thing is bound in leather and buckled at the center front. The Hound wore this outfit briefly at the top of season 7, but I didn't notice it because he wore it under his lemon cloak, which was taken last season when Lem was hanged. Here it is also in the HBO teaser that was released earlier in the year. Like Bran's, this quilted leather coat is studded with steel rivets and closed at the front with metal fasteners. The coat has a waist seam and 2-tier tabs protecting his hips. Under the coat, he's wearing a mail shirt and a quilted gambazon-like skirt for additional protection. In this close-up, you can see that the coat is heavily distressed so that many of the rivets are coming off, leaving just threads behind. For the dragonpit armistice, Cersei pulls a new frock out of her wardrobe. And I haven't been a fan of most of Cersei's gowns this season, and this one, next to her grayscale gown, is probably my least favorite. The biggest issue with it is this overjacket that she wears. I do like the simplicity, but it really pulls you out of the world because it's so terribly anachronistic. Clapton has carefully cultivated this world of Game of Thrones, and then later here she's abandoning her own set of design principles. Besides the design, there are some flaws in the execution. I had several viewers on Twitter inquire about this dress. Firstly, one viewer thinks that the reason why Cersei's gowns look so ill-fitting this season is because the actor who portrays Cersei, who's Heidi, that she's apparently lost some weight. And the most noticeable thing that I noticed is the hem. So at first glance, I thought it was a pull in the fabric, but actually Isoon on Twitter thinks that the trouble might be the actual hem. So either Heidi tripped on it or they had some issues with the wide hem because of the weight of the fabric. You can really see it in this picture, and also that the hem is flipped up at the very edge. I think this might also be from some overzealous breakdown on the hem. And the other thing that is off is that Cersei's wearing a crinoline here when she returns after her chat with Tyrion, but she's not actually wearing it while she's sitting. You can see that she's not wearing it here. These things happen sometimes, it probably looked odd during the filming of it when she was seated, so they decided just to do away with it, perhaps because the crinoline had hoops. Here's a close-up of the chainmail type fabric. Here's a shot of the gown without the overrobe. You can see that it's a bit ill-fitting across the chest. At the nape of the gown is a silver lion sigil, and I don't think this is embroidery. It looks more like it was cast in metal, like a brooch, and then attached to the gown after. The overcoat itself looks like felted wool. As you can see, the edges aren't finished, which is the beauty of this type of fabric. I can see why Clapton was drawn to this overcoat, though. The cap sleeves are very structural, and it gives Cersei the appearance of having armor because of the high, rounded shoulders. This technique cannot be achieved by manipulating seams, but it's likely that the wool was blocked into that shape in the same way that a hat would be blocked on a wooden mold. The molded sleeves are then set in Raglan style right to the collar. Despite all of my grievances about this costume, there is one thing that I do love about it. You might have noticed in these shots the ridges at the back of the coat seen here. These screen grabs are a bit blurry, but you can see that there is this unique texture down the center back. When I first saw it, it immediately reminded me of the work of alien creature creator H.R. Giger. Because I can't see the picture that well, I'm guessing that it's some type of pleating technique like wave tuck pleating or herringbone pleating as we see on the left. While the two images on the right, they're sort of an expansion on this idea using fabric manipulation, giving an impression of a spinal column. Here's another partial costume. This one's for Sansa's fur-lined hooded cloak. I love this so much, which is why I have it near the top of my list. As far as frugality goes, Michelle Clapton was very clever in the design of this cloak. I thought at first that it was an entirely new cloak, but upon closer inspection, I'm almost certain that the wardrobe team crafted a matching hood in the same weirwood leaf venation pattern, or vein pattern, as her wolf-top cloak. The hood is an entirely separate piece. Here is her cloak as worn last episode, topped with her wolf pelt. She wore the wolf pelt alone 2 episodes ago, so we know that the pelt and the cloak are separate pieces. In this shot, you can see that the hood is attached not to the cape, but to the body with these wide leather straps. And in this close-up, you can see the leaf vein pattern on both the hood and the cloak itself. The straps are hand-sewn into place with a blanket stitch. Jaime Lannister has lived in his Lannister armor for the most part for the last few seasons, so it was such a relief to see him in something completely different. I haven't actually seen this type of look on any other Lannister before, so maybe there is something to this. While it's hard to make it out here, his tunic is brown leather and not burgundy or red like his usual colors. Now, it could be just the lighting and I've got it all wrong. But the body, it's covered in metal plates while the sleeves are detachable like all of his coats that he's worn before. In this shot, you can see the plates a bit. They're sewn on with leather, and there's a bit of leather decoration sewn with a running stitch down the arm. You can see the leather lacing on the sleeves that attach them to the rest of the coat. The one thing that surprised me, however, is how similar Jaime's wool cloak is to Stannis Baratheon's. They are both bound in leather and fastened with leather straps, but the buckles on Jaime's cloak are slightly different. We had a surprising and yet long anticipated wedding, even if it took place in the past involving two people who are now dead. In this flashback scene, Bran discovers the secret wedding of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. I couldn't help but think of this other secret marriage when I saw it. You can see that Rhaegar is wearing a Targaryen-style coat similar to the one we see on his brother Viserys. The costume is Asian-inspired with the left-over right, asymmetrical coat closure. And while you can't really see it, it has a large dragon emblazoned on it like the one we see on Viserys. The thing that I find odd, though, is this wig. It looks so much like the one worn by actor Harry Lloyd. I had seen this leak a few weeks ago that Welsh actor Wilf Scolding, who's seen here, was cast as Rhaegar Targaryen, and honestly had hoped that it wasn't true, because really, of all the actors in the world, I am not sure why they chose this guy to play him. Now, Rhaegar aside, I love Lyanna's costume. It is very simple and clean, a sleeveless Grecian style. I don't know what a Stark wedding gown would look like, but since they are in Dorne, I suppose there would be influences from there. The color is a soft blue-gray, and it's definitely Stark. In this image, you can see the pretty trim. It looks like foliage and flowers, maybe with some gold metallic in with the blue. Another Stark nod is this rolled collar, again with some embroidery and beading detail that I can't quite see. Most likely, this is the work of embroidery artist Michelle Carragher. That does it for my Game of Thrones Season 7 recap videos. Thank you to everyone who has watched this series throughout the summer. In September, I will offer up my first non-Game of Thrones analysis of HBO's Westworld. If you found value in these videos, please subscribe to my channel. And if you'd like to support me, consider becoming a patron on my channel at Patreon. I will leave a link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching.